Hello everybody and welcome to Fantasy Premier League special centenary edition this one, because this week marks 100 games played in this Premier League season. Also 100 points dropped by you, leaving Joe Allen on the bench for Troy Deeney.
Yeah, I know, that wasn't very good. And more on my love-hate relationship with my beloved Joe Allen a little bit later on. We're going to be hearing from him in the show tonight. And speaking of who to get into your team, Mark, you've got all the tips for game week 11.
Yeah, that's right. In this show, I'm going to be looking at the chips and in particular the wild card. If yours is still burning a hole in your pocket, I'll be giving you some advice on how and when to play it. I'm also going to look at formations because it seems like the 3-5-2 is the new go-to setup for FPL managers. Jules?
Yeah, I did. I went for 3-5-2 for game week 10 myself, so we'll chat more about that later.
And it's more interesting than it sounds, I can assure you.
It is. It is a lot more interesting. Also, don't forget to give us a follow on Twitter @officialFPL, because there's loads of good stuff on there in between our shows every single day, including videos, lots of hints and tips on who to put in your team, and also lots about injuries throughout the week, which helps you out as well.
Certainly does. Let's have a look at the Week 10 numbers. Highest point scorer was German midfielder Ilkay Gundogan, who had a wonderful time of it last weekend against West Brom. 2 goals and an assist, 18 points he clocked up for Man City and for his owners. Now, last week, he only had 56,000 owners. We'll hear what his performance has done to the numbers a little bit later on.
And what about Sergio Aguero? He is back in the double figures. Oh, yes, and we are very happy about that because we both have him in our side. But 18%, just 18% of FPL managers actually chose to captain him for game week 10, but they were rewarded for keeping the faith by getting 32 points for him alone. MacArthur, on the other hand, he got 2 goals for Palace last weekend, which meant he clocked up 15 points, also in double figures.
Very impressive stuff. Back to Gundogan, because there's been kind of Annie get your Gundogan on the transfer front. I mentioned 56,000 people had him last week in their sides. That has gone up by 250,000 this week alone. Gundogan, everyone's been getting him in. Of course, those 2 goals midweek against Barcelona didn't exactly hurt on that front. His price has risen by 0.2 million in the meanwhile. A same figure that Coutinho's price has risen as well. Coutinho, by the way, has been transferred in enormously. He's now the second most owned player by fantasy managers worldwide.
And speaking of most owned, at one stage, Zlatan Ibrahimovic was the most owned fantasy Premier League player. He's now 8th in that list, and he's the most transferred out player going into game week 11. Not surprising based on another bad performance in Europe tonight. No goal in 6 Premier League games, and also 42 shots on goal without scoring. So not looking too good for Zlatan. Theo Walcott, on the other hand, I think it's a bit strange that he's in the most transferred out list. Of course, he does have that injury, but Arsene Wenger has said he could return for the North London derby this weekend. So not sure why everyone's jumping on transferring him out.
I'm not sure either, but I have a theory.
Hey!
Anyway, now, have you played your wild card yet? If not, Mark has got words for you.
Yeah, that's right. Chips can be so important to our season. They can be really powerful weapons if you play them at the right time. Now, I wanted to look at the chips with 10 game weeks gone to see just how many are in play at the moment and see how it breaks down. Now, right now, triple captain with almost 20% has been played, but all-out attack and bench boost, which need a bit more planning, have been less in play so far. But the one I'm really interested in is the wild card. 37% have played their first wild card so far. Now, remember that this wild card has to be played by December the 30th, that is for game week 19. So you haven't got too many game weeks left to play it. So I wanted to see how the wildcard's been played to this point over the first 10 game weeks and see whether there has been an optimum time to put it in play. Game week 4 is the one that leaps out. That was the first international break, so nearly 8% played it in that break. So does that mean that this forthcoming break is the time to play it? Maybe. It does give you longer to think about the transfers you want to make, and that is key. You've got to plan when to play the wild card. Christmas is a hectic period, so you want to give yourself time, you want to plan it and decide which game week you're going to play it in. And then, if you do that, you can make some transfers leading up to that perhaps take some risks that can really help you make a difference and gain ground in your mini leagues. That always works well for me. Plan the wild card and give yourself time to contemplate the transfers carefully. That is the key to success with the wild card. Jules.
Well, when we used our wild cards, it all went horribly wrong, didn't it?
Yes, it did, to be fair.
Yeah, and we've continued making transfers since then. quite
I certainly have.
You
yeah.
definitely made a few.
It's just so much fun. But you know what? It's paying off a little bit. I had a good week. Did you have a good week?
We both had a very good week. In fact, we ended up on the same amount of points, 82. We've had a pretty good week as far as that goes. However, I am still 2 points behind you in our overall score, even though I'm leading against you in terms of wins.
Yeah.
So, 5-4 to me at the moment in our James v. Jules head-to-head league. But
Boy, it's tight. Boy,
Yeah,
it's exciting.
it is, isn't it?
All right, now, let's talk a little bit about formations. Are you midfield heavy? Or do you like having plenty up on top? I must admit, I'm not in that camp myself, but the formation that you pick for your team could be absolutely crucial.
Yeah, and this season we're seeing a shift because 3-4-3 is normally the go-to formation for FPL managers. 70% of them went with that way at the start of the season, but now it seems with strikers failing us and midfielders really returning points, people are moving to 3-5-2. So this is the top 10 managers.
Right.
This is the formation.
So these are the fantasy managers who've done better than anybody. The top 10 teams. 3-4-3. Only 2 of that 10 are using 3 guys up front.
Yeah, and only 4 of them are using
only
3
4 of them,
forwards.
sorry,
So
yeah.
basically, they're packing the midfield with talent, and they're saving money up front and using their third strikers just as a bench striker to come on in emergency.
Right.
And that's a big deal because up until this point, 3-4-3 was the way to go.
And it's because the midfield likes of Sanchez and Hazard have been doing so well. Everyone's trying to get as many of them into their teams
And
as
Liverpool
possible.
midfielders as well. That's a factor. A lot of people turn into 2 of those. Like you say, Hazard, Sanchez, Walcott. There's so many choices there. Whereas up front, we've been quite limited.
Right, absolutely. Well, OK, let's have a look at 1 or 2 options in the midfield then.
Yeah, so these guys are the cheaper options in midfield that have come to the fore. We've seen a lot of these players this season so far, and a lot of people jump on them straight away.
Right.
A lot of transfer traffic.
We've heard about the traffic for Gundogan, and that's the reason there, the price, 5.6 million for a player who scored a brace against Barcelona midweek.
Yeah, and he's in Guardiola's team, and we think that's going to offer goals. It's the role that he plays as well. We thought he was going to operate deeper, but he seems to be getting forward. He's got 3 goals and 2 assists so far, and that price in that team, it promises so much.
Absolutely. All right. Hey, another player who scored a somewhat surprising brace last weekend, James McArthur, 2 goals against Liverpool. Where did this come from, and is there more on the way?
We didn't see it, did we? And I don't think it is, because I've looked at the stats and he scored 4 goals from 4 shots on target, so I doubt whether he can maintain that. But he's another player in that mix that allows people to play 5 in midfield and therefore, really spend on the big hitters. So I think avoid him for now, because the stats suggest it's going to regress.
All right. Other options then? Nasir Chadli, I know, is in the mix. Now, he's been a phenomenal acquisition for West Brom. Do you see that continuing?
Well, since he's been there, 75% of goals he's been involved in. 4 goals, 2 assists. Everything has come through him. He is key to their success. And I think with the fixtures looking good, after the break, he's an option. OK,
he's currently injured and thus will miss the game away at Leicester. But that Burnley game afterwards, he could be one to go for.
Needs to spend a bit more, but I think he could be worth it.
All right, now, a player who gets very little airtime in this show, Joe Allen, has done wonderfully well for plenty of people and for Jules' bench. Do you see that continuing? Is it worth getting
I'm becoming a believer because I watched him on Monday night against Swansea, and the fact that he's had 8 shots in the box in the last 4 game weeks, which is more than Sanchez even, he is really producing the numbers that means that we have to consider him. Their fixtures are still good. They've played the bottom 3 in the last 3 game weeks, Stoke, so I didn't want to get too carried away. But the fixtures are still suggest that Allen could get more points. So great price.
All right, nice one. Thanks, Mark. Jules, back to you.
Yes, I'd like to take full credit for the Joe Allen fan club. Thank you very much. And last week, he told me that only I was to blame for leaving him on my bench. Fair play, fair play. But here he is with the second part of that interview, and he tells us how his first season as an FPL manager is going so far.
Yeah, I had a good start, I'll be honest. I was right up there in our little league we've got going on, but the last few weeks have dropped off a little bit, and the big thing here is you don't want to be bottom at Christmas in our league, so I need to pick up a little bit. A couple of them mentioned the last couple of weeks they've decided to throw me in, so I'm hoping it's not too late and they haven't missed the only sort of hot streak. Yeah, a few of my friends have sort of let me know that I've done quite well for them recently, but I think the last few seasons. I think they've had some torrid times picking me in their team, so it's about time I got notched a few points up.
So Joe Allen finally rewarding some of his friends, including me. Finally, I put him in. 5.2 million gets him into your side as well, which we think is rather good value. And you've just spoken about formations with James. You spoke a lot about that 3-5-2 formation. So if you go for that, who are the cheap third strikers that people are putting on their bench? Who are people going for?
Yeah, so these are the guys you can get in to fill that slot, if you like. Now, you're not expecting much from these guys. You're putting them on the bench and you're hoping you don't have to call them because your squad can withstand the injuries. So the two guys at rock bottom prices that have been popular, Diamandi and Keane at Hull City, because the price, 4.6 and 4.5.
Yeah.
And Diamandi started the season well as well.
Do you know what the strange thing with Diamandi is? He's actually in 2 of the top 8 Fantasy Premier League managers' sides across the whole world. So 2 of the top 8 managers have got him on their bench.
Yeah, so
and
they went
that's
for
to
that
make way
option.
for that money, isn't it?
Absolutely. So they've piled money into midfield with probably with Coutinho, with Firmino, Sanchez and Hazard perhaps. But he gives you that option. Now, if you want to spend a bit more and you want to try and get some points out of that third striker, there are options as well. Stuani is one.
OK. And you'd go for Stuani over a Negredo?
Well,
Price-wise?
Yeah, he started the season well and he's that 5.1 price point. We don't know. The thing is, he's in and out of the team, so we don't know what to expect from him. But he could get you points when you need to call him.
OK.
The other one is Mo Barrow.
Yeah, of course. But let's move on to the other end of the scale now, to Sergio Aguero. We like to give you lots of hints and tips here on the FPL show. And Mark very kindly told you last week you must keep the faith in Aguero. But so many of you shipped him out of your side. I think about 96,000 Fantasy Premier League managers got rid of Aguero last week, but he rewarded them double points, the ones that kept the faith in Aguero. 16 points last week. Brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, I was wavering because we weren't sure on his minutes and his confidence, but the West Brom performance has convinced everyone, and now he's going to become the captain option that we really wanted.
Yeah.
So,
and what about from game week 10? Tom Heaton. We are Team Tom here on the FPL show. All 3 of us have got him as our first choice goalkeeper, and he delivered yet again. He is arguably the Fantasy Premier League player of the season so far, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, we were asked who is the essential players, and Heaton, I think, is in that bracket now. He's returning such value, and it's that price 4.7, and it's the saves. So many saves he's making. The United game was extraordinary, and he's returning lots of points and great value. I think you've got to have him.
Now, the most owned goalkeeper, David De Gea, who, of course, Tom Heaton was playing against last weekend. So let's see how they compare to each other, because a lot of Fantasy Premier League managers are still spending the money and going for someone like De Gea, hoping for those clean sheets. But if you look at the stats, he only has 1 more clean sheet than Tom Heaton so far.
Yeah, and De Gea's almost 40% owned. He was so popular at the start of the season, very expensive. But Heaton, this is the difference. You can see the start difference here.
It's those saves, isn't it?
This is it. With clean sheets, he's 1 behind, but he's returned 14 points from saves alone, whereas De Gea's only got 2 points. And that's what a cheaper keeper gives you.
Yeah.
He's under fire from shots, he makes saves, and Heaton is the best of the bunch.
Do you know what, though? He's only the 6th most owned goalkeeper. So you're expecting that to rise, especially at that price. You're saying get him before that price
and
rises.
I think with the wild cards over Christmas, I think we will see Heaton's ownership shoot up because he's going to be the go-to option for so many people. So get him now while he's 4.7.
Get him now if you haven't got him already. We are Team Tom here, aren't we, James?
We certainly are. Time round for us to take a very quick break. But you know what? Alexis Sanchez is the #1 point scorer this season in Fantasy Premier League. So why does Mark Sutherland say it might be time to ship him out? We'll be finding out right after this break.